Okay, I'm now joined by Jared Kotler of the Connecticut Scoreboard podcast. We are going to break down this UConn team and preview this fantastic Elite Eight matchup with Duke. Jared, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here and excited for this matchup.
This is one of those ones where the names just seem to add an even extra layer of weight to it. And I'm someone who gets annoyed. Like last year when UNC stunk, just the constant bombardment of Duke UNC, Duke UNC. Well, it's hard to care when the teams are bad.
Yeah.
But when it's ACC champion Duke against Big East champion UConn, the history, just the weight that those names carry, it seems to make this game feel even more important than it would if it was, say, like, I don't know, Iowa against Illinois or something like that.
Yeah, no, this is a matchup with a lot of gravitas to it. I know if you're a college basketball fan, these are two of the biggest brands in the sport that you're just really excited to see play on such a big stage with the trip to the Final Four on the line. I'm not sure there's much more you could ask for if you're a big time college basketball fan or even a casual college basketball fan. This is a game you're going to be wanting to tune into 5 o'clock on a Sunday. What else do you have to do?
Oh, the casual college basketball fans are going to eat this one up. But
Yeah.
so here we are again, Duke facing one of the stud Big East teams. They just beat the best defense in the conference in St. John's. Now they go to battle with the best offense in the league. And once again, this is a team that they're going to have to deal with a spectacular two-way big man in Terrace Reed.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure there's going to be a bigger difference in Big East matchups you could get than going from St. John's to UConn. These are two teams that play completely differently. St. John's is going to really want to be physical with you, really, just like a tough in the trenches team. And UConn, as you mentioned, top offense in the Big East. They're going to make things interesting. The sets they run are very complex, really hard to prep for, especially on the quick day turnaround here. Always makes it tough. And I always think a little bit of an advantage in UConn's favor when teams have to prep for them on short notice. You mentioned Terrace Reed there. He's having the tournament of his life here. He's really come to show all that he can do, both offensively, defensively. And that's obviously one of the key matchups you're going to be looking at is Terrace Reed and whether Duke's going to throw a pad at him. See what they're going to do to try to slow him down a little bit. That's going to be one of the keys I'm looking at for this matchup.
Yeah, he has just been spectacular in this tournament so far. 20 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists in the Michigan State win. Wasn't even his best game. He had the 27 rebound performance against Furman. He put up a double-double against UCLA. And this guy has just been utterly unstoppable on the boards until the Spartans got him. And then even then he put in his best scoring performance of the tournament instead.
Yeah, this is a guy who Dan Hurley has really pushed all year long to really try to get him to play at a high level. There have been times where you've seen what Terrace is capable of doing, which you're seeing in full effect over the past week or so here, but you haven't always seen that consistently from him. And Dan has really tried to get him to play that way. If you're on social media, you'll see UConn fans tweeting photos of grizzly bears at him. That's been a thing Dan Hurley started, and he wants him to play like a grizzly bear, Kodiak bear, he calls it. He wants him to play with that toughness, and Dan, as he says, hates it when he plays like Kung Fu Panda. So I think you're seeing that grizzly Kodiak bear show up the past week or so here, and I think again this is a matchup that's going to be really interesting because I'm very curious to see how Duke's going to try to contain him, especially if he stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah, and especially with Gungba still seeming a little bit minutes limited coming
Yeah.
off of the injury, that it's going to be a lot of Malik Brown in that one. He's going to be giving up some size there. And I mean, Brown is not quite at his best as a low post defender. He's someone you want to be able to switch around with, let him run around and just wreak havoc all over the
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, exactly. That's why this matchup is one that I've got circled because if you've got Malik Brown going up against Terrace, I like to think that that tends to lend itself to go in Terrace's side there. Even the Pat matchup now, again, as you mentioned, him being a little banged up still. I think that's one that could go in Terrace's favor, especially if he's not 100% still. But obviously one that everyone's going to be looking at coming into Sunday night's game.
So Gungba banged up, as I talked about in the first segment. Caleb Foster's back, but banged up. UConn's got an issue of their own. All Big East first teamer Silas Demery, who has gotten back the last two games, has honestly, to me, just not looked that great. He played 23 minutes in the Michigan State game, but Malachi Smith took some of his minutes late, only had 2 points. Where are you at with him? Like, what's the expectation logically for him for this game with one more recovery day?
Yeah, I think Silas is really gutting it out. Dan Harley said after in the post game that he's playing at probably about 70%, which if you're watching the game and you've seen Silas play throughout the season, it's probably pretty accurate with what you saw from him last night. First half, he definitely looked better. He especially on the defensive side of things, he seemed to be a little bit better, was able to move a little bit better defensively. But when it came to trying to operate within the offense, driving to the basket, a little bit tentative. Not sure he has the lift, that an elevation that he normally has. And I think we were talking Terrace in his matchup down low. I mean, I think you talk about two guys. I know it was really great to see what Caleb Foster was able to do for Duke in that game, coming off of his injury. But again, this is a quick turnaround for him too, having not played in a few weeks here. Played what I think 18 minutes last night, 20 minutes
And looked
in that game.
awful in the first half.
Yeah, and now you got to turn around pretty quickly and prep for a UConn team where this offense is so complicated. They're gonna run you around. If your legs aren't quite up for it yet, it could be tricky. So I'm gonna be curious to see how he rebounds too, coming off the quick turnaround. So those two guards in Silas and Caleb, and seeing how healthy they are, I think is going to be a big factor in the game. And that's where you mentioned Malachi Smith. He's a transfer from Dayton, if fans aren't familiar, who's really taken on the backup point guard duties this year and done a really good job with it. Had some ups and downs throughout Big East play. I think for a smaller guard like he is, Big East play could be tough. It's so physical. And once UConn gets to the non-conference part of things, whether it was in the beginning of the season, now in the NCAA tournament, he's seemed to play at a much higher level, and he's just been fantastic in this tournament, having to take on a bulk of the minutes. Silas wasn't available to play in the opening round matchup against Furman, so it was Malachi and Alec Millender, who came from IU Indy, who has barely played all year, had to take all of those minutes. So I think even if Silas isn't at 100%, if you could get those 15 to 20 minutes out of him, and really milk him get some good value out of him, I think it really sets up this UConn team to be able to do some things. That a couple weeks ago when Silas first got hurt, you really started to think, can this UConn team actually really have a chance to move forward in this tournament without him?
Does Malachi still never want to shoot unless he has to?
Kind of, yeah. He loves the buzzer beater threes. As the shot clock's winding down and it's up to him. He's definitely not a shoot first point guard in this system, especially with some of the other guys that he's out on the floor with in terms of the offensive weapons that UConn has. But he's done a good job of being selective. I mean, I think if you look at his shots from three over the past couple of months here, I think he's like a 40+% 3-point shooter. So he has been able to nail these shots when he takes them. Had a really fun one against Michigan State where the ball bounced around a couple times. But he likes these big moments. In these big time games, he's been able to hit some clutch shots for this UConn team. And I think when he's out there, UConn's not looking for him to be the scorer. They're really looking for him to be the quarterback of this offense that Dan Harley runs. There's so many other weapons out there offensively that if he could just be an efficient point guard, manage the clock, not turn over the ball. It really almost is like a quarterback as you think about it in football and what you're looking for him to really manage the game and put other guys in good positions.
Yeah, I mean, he's as old school as it gets from a point guard perspective, where if it's the first 20 seconds of the shot clock, he's probably not going to shoot unless he looks up and all of a sudden he can just go right to the rim. And there's just
Yeah.
nobody waiting for him.
Yeah, no, he did have a couple nice moves to the rim in a couple of these games in the tournament, so definitely part of his game. Not the first thing he's going to do, but it is there.
So I don't think we need to spend much time on Alex Caravan, the other star of this team. I think at this point, everyone should know what Alex Caravan's game is about. I mean, he's basically the same guy we saw on that first national title team 3 years ago. He's just better at
Yeah.
everything. Is that the correct assessment here?
Yeah, and he's the leader of this team. He's the captain. Every time UConn's needed a clutch bucket this season in particular, he's been the guy they've gone to, and he's usually always delivers in those situations. When Michigan State got things a little squirrely towards the end there, He had a clutch three. I think they were UConn's up one with a minute or so left. He gets fouled with the 1-and-1, swishes the free throws. He's the guy you want the ball in his hands late. And I know Dan Hurley talks about him being another coach out there on the court. He's been with this system for so long. He knows the ins and outs of it. He's directing traffic out there. I think at one point last night they mentioned how he called out his own play. So he's a guy that's just so experienced out there. And I think that's something that's interesting to look at in this matchup when you're looking at a Duke team that's got a lot of younger guys here. Alex is I mean, he's a grown man compared to some of these guys, just from an experience and age perspective out there and in these college basketball situations, in these NCAA tournament games in particular, having been a part of so many with the Huskies over his time here.
Yeah, and then you got Solo Ball leads the team in shot attempts, just kind of a like a slasher scorer on a team with a lot of just kind of certain skill sets to piece together. He's that one guy that you need to just put the ball in the bucket occasionally.
Yeah, yeah. Solo's had his ups and downs this year. I know his shooting isn't what he'd want it to be. But the game against Michigan State last night started to break out again, made a few threes after going 0 for against UCLA. But when he's able to make a three or two, it really kind of puts defenses on their toes where they've got to be able to account for the three. And he's been able to then just blow by guys and get to the basket. And whether it's picking up a foul, or making the basket. He's made things tough on defenses that way. So you can't just cheat out on him when he's able to hit those threes. So I think he's going to be a big factor in this game. Defense has been up and down for him, but last night again against Michigan State really keyed in defensively. I think one of his best defensive games as a Husky. So that's going to be a big thing that I'm looking at in terms of early on, can Solo Ball get going? And one of the fun little narratives I always like in these NCAA tournaments, he's a local, he's a DMV guy, so he gets to play at home in DC in front of, a bunch of family and friends. I always like to see those guys go off in those situations and see if he can continue it on Sunday.
Any other guy that we haven't mentioned that we should be looking at as someone who could have a giant effect on this game?
Yeah, I'll mention Braylon Mullins. He's a freshman. He's a came in as a great shooter. Again, he's had some ups and downs throughout the year from shooting, but it started in the UCLA game, started to nail some shots and looked better. Um, he brings just more of that offensive firepower. That at any point UConn's got three or four guys out there who could, really nail down some threes there. Mentioned Terrace. Eric Wright was a freshman off the bench, center who could give some good minutes. He's had to play in some really tough spots when Terrace was injured earlier this year. Started at Kansas again, and in Allen Fieldhouse and had a really good game there. So he's got that experience, that he doesn't shy away in these big moments. So he's just kind of one of those sneaky under the radar guys to take a look at. Jalen Stewart, been a key bench player for them, has been out for the past month. He just made his debut against Michigan State, played about, I think, 5 minutes, hit a three, a few rebounds. In a game against Duke where they need that physicality and size to guard, especially, if they could get some time out of him, that'd be great. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jaden Ross, who's been a revelation for this team the past month. Just physical guy, defensively, just a pest. Like, you really don't want him guarding you. It's going to be a pain. And he's also been able to put things together offensively a bit. Against UCLA, had a big offensive output. If you look in the box score against Michigan State, you're not going to think necessarily he had the biggest game, grabbing some clutch rebounds and then just being a pain defensively. So I know it went up and down kind of the roster there, but this UConn team, prides itself on having some depth, and it's really helped carry them at times throughout this season.
So one of the key things that I think we can just assume the way it's going to go, because this is a UConn team that loses the free throw battle quite often to even inferior opponents against one of the best free throw
Yeah.
margin teams in the country in Duke. Duke is going to get to the line a lot more. The good thing is both fan bases are going to be furious about the other side getting their normal specialty whistle in this one, so we can enjoy that. But Duke's going to dominate in terms of free throw attempts in this one. How does UConn start to make up that margin against one of the best defenses in the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think for UConn, it's going to come down to their three-point shooting. In Philly last week, unfortunately, shots weren't going their way from three. A lot of rimming out, a lot of threes that were somewhat just way off as well. But it seems like, yeah, last night against Michigan State, three-point shooting was much better. That's going to be a key. And then I think if Terrace Reed could dominate down low, that's going to be a big difference maker. Again, that's a matchup I'm really curious to look at in terms of who's guarding him. He's just taking this game to a whole nother level. So if they could trade them, maybe a couple free throws with points Terrace could get around the basket. And again, three is greater than two. So if they could come out hot from three, that could make up for some of that free throw disparity there.
I mean, neither of these teams are all that spectacular from three. Just both kind of pretty solid, but I think we've hit on that big one is that Malik Brown Terrace Reed matchup, and especially if Patrick Gungba is going to be capped out at like 20-ish minutes
Yeah.
for Duke, who dominates that one? It does feel like one of those matchups where both teams are probably unspectacular from three. If we obviously get the big, holy crap, somebody made 14, or oh my God, how the hell did blank just make four? That probably swings it, but anything else you're looking at in terms of a key to watch for in this one?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, I think 3-point shooting. I think that Terrace matchup. But I mean, obviously, we've all seen what Cam Boozer can do, and it's going to be who's able to kind of stymie him a little bit, and who's UConn going to be able to throw at him. Is it Caravan? Do they try Terrace Reed on him for a little bit? Do you throw a pesty defender like Jaden Ross on him? It's going to be tough to stop. He's going to get his buckets. I'm very curious how this UConn team staff is going to game plan for Cam in particular.
There does seem like a possibility, however remote it is, that Boozer is just simply too strong and fast for Caravan.
Yeah.
And like this is the oh my God, Duke just kicked their butts scenario where now we're seeing the sad shots of him on the bench in foul trouble. It's like, oh, this is it. This is really how Alex Caravan's career is going to end. But I mean, Duke also just has not been able to properly set up Boozer to dominate this whole tournament. It feels like the scouting reports have been pretty good all the way through, and Dixon into Patino. It's not going to get any easier against Hurley.
No, and one thing that I'm going to keep my eye on, you talk about how difficult the matchup could be for Alex Caravan to guard Cam Boozer. It's going to be equally as tough when you flip that thing. If Cam Boozer's guarding Alex Caravan's going to be running off screens all game long when they're on the offensive side of the ball. He's going to be making Cam run all over that court. One thing Alex does is move so well without the ball. He's going to just have him in some stitches running around. And obviously, Cam's, I'm sure, a well-conditioned guy, but if you got this short rest, you're chasing Alex around, he can make those shots. I'm curious how that then it has an impact on the other side for him offensively.
It's going to be Dame Sar.
Yeah.
This is literally why you have Dame Sar on your roster, is to guard Alex Caravan in this type of game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, again, I think that it's an interesting matchup, whoever they choose to throw at him, because Alex can do so much. He could drive to the basket. Um, he could shoot it from three. We've all seen what he's been able to do throughout his time at UConn. So I think whoever you're going to throw at him is definitely going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, the only other thing to watch out for, just whether or not, and I think we could talk about the injury spots for both guards. I think UConn is probably in better shape if we just
Mhm.
say, oh, Demery and Foster are both just going to be bad in this game. And when Foster struggled in that first half, Duke was basically dead in the water without Caden Boozer, just having
Yeah.
to produce magic over and over and over again. And that Foster injury, if they can't get 15 good minutes out of him, Duke is probably going to be in a fair amount of trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree on that point. I mean, the Foster injury was why if I'm was looking at my bracket when this thing first came out, obviously Duke's been really good this year, but if you have a chance to play him in there a little bit beat up, especially on the Foster side of things, if UConn's able to, put him in some trouble, he's already not at 100%, be a bit pesky defensively. I think it's a difference maker there.
Regardless, we know this is going to be a super fun game. And Jared, you will
Definitely.
be chronicling this whole thing for UConn. And if they continue on to the Final Four after this, so where can all of the good people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter is where I'm most active at Jared Kotler, and the podcast is at CT Scoreboard Pod. If you're looking for other things to watch or listen to pregame, I've got a series with Alex Caravan. I know we talked a lot about him. Just did an episode with him leading into the Elite Sweet 16 Elite 8 weekend here. So a lot of fun stuff if you want to learn about a little bit more about him, and his thoughts on things heading into the weekend.
Yeah, that should be fun. Everyone go give that a listen. Go give Jared a follow. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And thank you to Brian for joining me for the recap as well. Thank you to all of you for listening. You know the drill. If Duke wins, we'll be back early this week for a Final Four preview. If not, probably take a couple of days off, but follow the show at Up the Coast Pod on Twitter for all of those updates.